welcome to your deep dive on intermittent fasting. You send in a pretty fascinating stack of videos on IF, breaking down the science and benefits and all that.
Yeah,
Seems like you really want to get past the hype.
definitely. Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack here for sure. We'll be looking at the changes in your body, like hour by hour during a fast, the impact on your brain, and even some of the historical and cultural stuff.
I'm ready. Before we even get started, we absolutely have to talk about safety.
Right.
Seriously.
Super important.
Intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Look, it shows promise for some, but it definitely carries potential risks, and it's just flat out not for everyone.
Okay, like who specifically should avoid it?
Well, definitely children, women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, anyone who's underweight or, malnourished. And critically, anyone with a history of eating disorders. MNEF is not appropriate there,
Yeah.
period.
That makes sense.
And also, if you're on any medications, especially anything that affects blood sugar, like for diabetes, you absolutely must talk to your doctor before even thinking about trying this. It's non-negotiable. Safety first.
Couldn't agree more. That's a really critical warning to start with.
Should we maybe start with a super clear definition of what IF is and maybe what it isn't, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the videos makes a really good point right off the bat. Intermittent fasting, it's all about when you eat, not what you eat. It's more of a timed eating thing rather than like a diet.
Okay, so less about cutting out specific foods and more about just like creating a schedule for eating and not eating.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like giving your body a timetable, for fueling and digesting. And this actually lines up with how our ancestors used to eat. I mean, they didn't have access to food 24/7, so they naturally went through these feast and famine cycles.
That's a really cool connection. So IF is like working with our natural biology instead of against it.
Yeah, totally. And one of the most popular ways people do IF is the 168 method. You basically fast for 16 hours, and then you have an 8-hour window to eat.
So you could skip breakfast, have your first meal at noon, and then finish dinner by like 8 p.m. It sounds pretty manageable, right?
Right.
But what's happening in our bodies during those fasting hours? That's what I'm super curious about.
Right. That's where it gets really interesting. So picture this. You've just finished your last meal, blood sugar rises, insulin gets released, and everything gets tucked away, as glycogen in your liver and muscles, like stored energy for later.
Like little squirrels storing up nuts for the winter.
Exactly. Now, as those first few hours go by, your body's done digesting, you might start to feel, surprisingly, a boost of energy after about 6 to 8 hours or so.
Really? I think we'd start feeling kind of sluggish without food. What's going on there?
Well, your digestive system gets a break. It's not working on processing food anymore, so that energy's freed up for other things. And then, around 12 hours in, you officially hit the fasted state.
Okay, so 12 hours, things are starting to shift. What's happening at the cellular level? I'm dying to know.
Well, at this point, your insulin levels plummet, right? No more incoming glucose from food. And as insulin goes down, your liver's like, okay, time to convert some stored fat into ketones.
Ketones, aren't those like an alternative fuel for our bodies? Kind of like switching from gas to electric power?
Perfect analogy. And get this, ketones are way more efficient for our bodies than glucose. This is often why people feel more energized and focused during a fast.
So we're not only tapping into fat stores, but also upgrading to a better fuel source. I'm starting to see why people love the mental clarity they get with IF.
And it goes beyond just feeling more alert. Ketones actually boost BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is like essential for brain health.
BDNF, that sounds super important. Remind me why that's so crucial.
Think of BDNF as the architect of your brain. It builds and maintains connections between brain cells, the ones we need for learning and memory and just overall brain power.
So more BDNF, stronger, healthier brain.
Exactly. And some studies even suggest that more BDNF might even protect against neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So even 12 hours of fasting can have huge effects on our brains. What happens if we keep going beyond that 12-hour mark?
Oh, it gets even more interesting. Around 18 hours, ketone production really ramps up. Like, it's measurable in your blood now. And one of the videos actually talked about how if you pair IF with exercise, you can actually boost ketone production even more.
Interesting. And that has benefits beyond just weight loss, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Early research is suggesting that increased ketones, especially with exercise, could maybe improve learning and memory. It's mostly in animals right now, but it's really cool to think about.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What else happens as we go deeper into the fasting window?
So around 24 hours, your glycogen stores are pretty much tapped out. Your body's basically running on fat for fuel. And this is when autophagy kicks in.
Autophagy, I remember that word. It's like our cells doing a big cleanup, right?
You got it. Autophagy is like your body's internal recycling system. It breaks down and reuses old or damaged parts, like it's cleaning up cellular junk and regenerating things.
Our body's doing a deep clean while we fast. That's wild.
It is, and the scientists who figured this out actually won a Nobel Prize in 2016, so it's a pretty big deal.
Wow, Nobel Prize-winning science.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I feel like there's a pattern here. Longer fasts, more benefits. What happens when we push past 24 hours?
Well, when you hit the 48-hour mark, human growth hormone, HGH, surges.
HGH, isn't that the muscle-building repair hormone?
You know it. And this actually debunks a big fitness myth. You might think you need to constantly eat protein to build muscle, but our bodies are really good at adapting.
So no need to be chugging protein shakes every couple of hours.
Not exactly. Our ancestors didn't have protein 24/7. They evolved to use what they had, and during those lean times, our bodies get super efficient at using existing protein for muscle growth and repair.
That's so cool. It's like our bodies have this built-in survival mode for when food is scarce. What if we keep fasting like past 48 hours? Do we just unlock new levels?
We do, but we have to be super careful with longer fasts. One of the experts in the videos really stressed that you need to work up to those longer fasts slowly and make sure you're getting enough nutrients so you don't have any side effects.
Good point. Safety first. But let's say we are being careful and working our way up. What happens in those longer fasts?
One of the coolest things is a big increase in stem cell production, especially at 72 hours and beyond. Stem cells are like the building blocks of our bodies. You know, they regenerate and repair tissues.
Stem cell activation. That sounds pretty powerful.
It is. And on top of that, you also get enhanced immune function. Makes sense, right? When resources are scarce, your body goes into survival mode, and a strong immune system is key for fighting off threats.
So extended fasting could be like hitting the reset button for our bodies.
Yeah.
Boosting regeneration and immunity.
It's a really interesting area of research, and the potential benefits are huge. But again, longer fasts aren't for everyone, and you always want to talk to a doctor before doing anything more than a 24-hour fast.
Absolutely. It's clear that IF has a huge impact on our bodies, but I'm curious about the brain stuff too. We talked about the BDNF boost, but are there other benefits to how our brains work?
Oh yeah, some of them are mind-blowing, honestly. Remember ketones are superfuel?
Of course.
Well, one of the things they do is they trigger that BDNF production. You know, like we said, it's super important for those brain cell connections.
Right. Building those brain highways for learning and memory.
Yep. And one expert even pointed out that this could be one reason why some people with early dementia see their memory improve with IF. Like it's giving their brains a tune-up.
That's incredible. Anything else IF does for brain function?
There's research showing that fasting actually makes the neurons that are all about learning and memory more active. It's like your brain sharpens itself during a fast, gets more efficient, more focused.
Like turning down the background noise so you can concentrate.
Exactly. One study found that people who did IF for a few weeks, their brains were working more efficiently, like they were working smarter, not harder.
Wow, so IF isn't just physical changes, it's like upgrading our brains too. That's wild. But I have to admit, I still have some worries. What about all the stuff people say about muscle loss, brain fog, those hunger pangs? Are any of those actually true?
Those are all good questions, and the videos you shared actually address them pretty directly. Let's break them down. First, muscle loss. Total myth. Like we talked about, the growth hormone boost during fasting actually protects muscle.
That's a relief. Okay, what about brain fog? Does fasting make you feel mentally slower?
Another myth. Remember, ketones are super efficient brain fuel. Some people actually say they feel more mentally clear when they're fasting.
Okay, that makes sense. But hunger pangs. I can't imagine going hours without eating and not feeling totally ravenous.
Hunger is real, for sure, but the videos had some great tips for managing it.
Okay, I need to know. How do we tame those hunger monsters?
Staying busy is key. When you're working or doing something you enjoy, you're less likely to obsess over food.
Makes sense. Keep your mind off of it. What else?
Remember electrolytes. Staying hydrated makes a huge difference. Sometimes your body confuses thirst for hunger, so drinking water can help.
That's true. I've definitely thought I was hungry when I was actually just thirsty. What about adjusting the eating window? How does that help with hunger?
That's where personalization comes in. You can try different eating windows to find what works for you. Like if you get super hungry at night, you might shift your eating window later.
So you're not stuck to a rigid schedule, you can make it work for you.
Exactly. Oh, and there's another thing that sometimes happens, especially when you're first starting the dawn phenomenon.
Dawn phenomenon. What's that?
It's basically a blood sugar spike that can happen in the morning even though you haven't eaten anything. It's linked to insulin resistance, which tends to get better as your body gets used to fasting.
So even though you're fasting, your blood sugar goes up. That seems counterintuitive.
It can feel that way, but it usually improves over time. And you can manage it with things like morning exercise or certain supplements.
Good to know. We've covered a lot of ground. The changes in our bodies, the brain benefits, and even managing those pesky hunger pangs. But what about the practical side of IF? Do you have to follow a special diet? Can you still enjoy your favorite foods?
Those are great questions, and one of the videos really emphasized that IF is super flexible. You can combine it with pretty much any diet, keto, paleo, Mediterranean, whatever works for you.
That's great news. So could you, like, fast for a while and then have pizza during your eating window?
Totally.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about IF. You can still enjoy your favorite foods just within a certain time frame.
That sounds much more sustainable than those super restrictive diets out there.
It can be. But before we get too excited about all the benefits, we need to talk about safety and sustainability, especially with those longer fasts.
Right. Safety first. What are the key things to keep in mind?
Definitely start gradually, ease into it, and listen to your body. Don't jump into a long fast without preparing.
So take it slow. Don't go cold turkey. Got it.
Exactly. And another big one is supplementing with electrolytes, especially sodium.
Electrolytes. Isn't that what athletes drink after a workout? Why are they important for fasting?
Electrolytes are minerals that do a ton of important stuff in our bodies, like keeping us hydrated, helping our nerves and muscles work right, and even regulating our heartbeat.
So they keep everything running smoothly. But why are they so important when we're fasting?
When you're fasting, you lose electrolytes through things like urine and sweat, and if you don't replenish them, it can lead to some serious health problems.
Okay, that makes sense. So we need to make sure we're getting enough electrolytes.
Right. And it's super important to talk to a doctor before starting IF, especially if you have any health conditions like diabetes or heart problems.
Good advice. Always best to check with a doctor before making any big changes.
And finally, we need to talk about refeeding what you eat after your fast. You don't want to undo all the good stuff by binging on junk food.
So what's the best way to break a fast without messing everything up?
The videos recommended starting with small, healthy meals and gradually increasing your portions as you go back to your normal eating pattern.
So just like you ease into fasting, you ease out of it too.
Got it. This is all incredibly interesting. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what IF is all about.
It's a deep dive for sure. We've looked at all the changes in your body hour by hour, the brain benefits, and even some of the history of fasting.
And we busted some myths along the way. But I'm ready to dive even deeper. What's next?
Well, now that you have the basics, we can start exploring the details. We can look at different IF protocols, specific health conditions it might help with, and how to make IF work best for you. There's so much more to learn. I'm ready for part 2 of this deep dive.
It's really amazing how much there is to learn about IF, right? We've covered a lot already, but there's so much more to explore.
Totally. I'm still thinking about those tips for dealing with hunger pangs. They seemed really practical, not just like mind over matter, you got this. What were some of the things that stuck out to you?
Well, one of the simplest things, but maybe the most effective, is just staying busy. When you're focused on work or a hobby or even just hanging out with people, you're less likely to be thinking about food all the time.
It's like, yeah, idle hands of the hunger monster's playground or something.
Yeah.
Keep yourself busy, and those cravings won't be as bad.
Exactly. And remember how we talked about electrolytes? Making sure you're properly hydrated can really help with cravings too. Sometimes our bodies get those signals mixed up, thinking we're hungry when we're really just thirsty.
Oh, that's so true. I've totally had those moments where I think I'm starving, and then I drink a big glass of water, and it's like, poof, gone.
It's crazy how our bodies do that. And when it comes to making IF work for you, tweaking that eating window can make a big difference too.
Right. We talked about experimenting with different eating windows. Like if you know you always get ravenous in the evenings, maybe you shift your eating window a bit later.
Exactly. It's all about finding what works with your body's natural rhythm. Actually, one of the videos even mentioned that adjusting your sleep schedule could help with hunger.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about a connection between sleep and hunger before. How does that work?
Well, if you go to bed earlier, you're less likely to be up late snacking. And getting enough sleep helps your metabolism function better overall.
So a good night's sleep can actually support our fasting goals. I like the sound of that. But even with all these strategies, I'm sure some people still struggle with intense hunger pangs, especially when they're just starting out.
Oh, absolutely. Fasting definitely takes practice, and it's not always easy. But one thing that came up again and again in the videos is that those intense hunger feelings usually lessen as your body adapts to fasting.
So it's more of a temporary hurdle, not a permanent roadblock. That's good to know. It's like anything new, there's an adjustment period.
Totally. As your body gets better at burning fat for fuel, those cravings tend to calm down. Plus, you're likely to have more energy during your fasting window.
That makes sense. It's like you're training your body to use its own energy reserves, that stored fat we talked about earlier. But switching gears a bit, what about nutrient deficiencies? If you're eating less often, are you also getting fewer vitamins and minerals?
That's a valid concern, and it really highlights why focusing on nutrient-dense foods is so important with IF. It's not an excuse to just eat whatever you want during your eating window.
So it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
Exactly. One video really stressed the importance of choosing nutrient-rich foods, vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, healthy fats.
So you're basically squeezing all the good stuff from a balanced diet into a smaller window of time.
You got it. And if you're worried about specific nutrients, talking to a registered dietitian or nutritionist can be super helpful. They can help you create a meal plan that makes sure you're getting everything you need.
That kind of personalized guidance can make a world of difference. Now, you mentioned earlier that IFs can work with different diets. Are there any that work particularly well with IF?
One that comes up a lot is a ketogenic diet, keto for short.
Keto, yeah. High fat, low carb. Right.
That's the gist. The keto diet is all about cutting way back on carbs and replacing them with fat. This shifts your body into ketosis, where it starts burning fat for energy instead of glucose.
Which aligns perfectly with what we talked about earlier about ketones being a more efficient fuel source.
Yeah.
So how does keto pair with intermittent fasting?
Well, both IF and keto can shift your body into fat-burning mode on their own. When you combine them, they can work together, maybe speed up weight loss and boost some of those other benefits.
It's like a power couple for fat burning.
Yeah.
But I have to say, keto seems pretty hardcore. Do you absolutely have to go full-on keto to benefit from IF?
Not at all. One expert really made it clear that IF can work with any diet as long as you're focusing on whole foods and listening to your body.
That's reassuring. It's not about following a strict set of rules, but finding what feels good and supports your overall health goals.
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to chat with a doctor before making big diet changes, especially if you have any health conditions.
Good advice. Now, we've talked about some of the benefits, but I'm really curious about the weight loss claims. Is there actual science to back up the hype?
There's definitely a lot of buzz about IF for weight loss, and some of it is totally valid. A lot of the videos emphasize that IF can help people lose weight, but it's not because it's some magic bullet.
So if it's not magic, how does it work?
It mainly comes down to calorie restriction. When you limit your eating window, you naturally end up eating fewer calories overall, which can lead to weight loss.
Okay, that makes sense. But isn't calorie restriction kind of the basis of most weight loss strategies?
Yeah.
What makes IF different?
It's not just about the calorie restriction itself, but also the changes that happen in your metabolism when you're fasting. Remember those ketones?
The superhero fuel, yep, I remember.
Right. When your body's in a fasted state and burning ketones, it becomes much better at using stored fat for energy.
So IF helps us tap into those fat reserves more effectively.
Exactly. And some studies even suggest that IF might be a little more effective for weight loss than traditional calorie restriction diets, maybe because of those metabolic changes.
That's really interesting. What about keeping the weight off long term? Is it just a quick fix, or can IF help with that too?
That's where things get a little more complicated. While IF can definitely jumpstart weight loss, how well you keep it off really depends on other things like your lifestyle, your diet choices, and how your body responds to fasting.
So it's not a magical cure-all. You still need to make healthy choices to see lasting results.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that weight loss is complex. It's affected by things like genetics, hormones, even your environment.
Right, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. But for a lot of people, IF can be a really valuable tool. It can help them have a better relationship with food, manage their weight, and just feel better overall. It's all about finding an approach that feels sustainable and fits into a healthy lifestyle.
That's a great point. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about finding a way of eating that feels good and supports your health goals in the long run. But we've been talking a lot about the physical stuff. What about the psychological side of IF? How does it affect our mental and emotional well-being?
That's a really good question. It's definitely an area that researchers are paying more attention to. Some of the videos actually talked about how IF could improve mood, boost brain function, and even reduce stress.
Really? That's fascinating. What's the science behind those benefits?
Well, think back to those ketones and how they have a positive impact on the brain.
Hmm.
They can boost BDNF, which is crucial for healthy brain cells.
Right. The brain's master architect.
Exactly. And that increase in BDNF is thought to be part of why IF might lead to better brain function, a better mood, and maybe even protect against those neurodegenerative diseases.
So IF could actually be good for our brains in multiple ways. That's amazing.
The research is definitely promising. And beyond BDNF, fasting can also impact our neurotransmitters, those chemical messengers in our brains that control things like mood, motivation, and focus.
So it's not just about changing what we eat, but how our brains work too.
Precisely. And some people even say they feel mentally clearer and more aware when they're fasting, like their minds are less cluttered and working more efficiently.
It's like a mental detox.
You could say that.
Right.
But it's also important to remember that everyone's experience with IF is different. Some people might feel fantastic and have all these positive changes, while others might find it challenging or even triggering.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. It's crucial to pay attention to how IF makes you feel, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely. If you have any negative side effects or if you've struggled with disordered eating, definitely talk to a healthcare professional.
Good advice. Safety and well-being should always come first. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the historical and cultural side of IF. You said that our ancestors probably went through periods of fasting because of food scarcity. Are there any other cultural or religious practices that involve fasting?
Fasting has been a part of human history and spirituality for a really long time. Many religions, like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism, have fasting traditions for spiritual reasons, for self-discipline, or to commemorate important events.
So it's not just a modern-day trend, but something that's been woven into human history and spirituality for centuries. I love that.
It shows how powerful fasting can be. And one of the videos even talked about how IF could have implications for society as a whole. They suggested it could be a more sustainable way to consume food, especially with all the resource challenges we're facing.
That's a really interesting thought. So IF could potentially be a tool for both personal and global well-being.
It's definitely something to think about, and it highlights how multifaceted IF is and how it could impact our lives on so many levels.
I'm honestly blown away by how much this deep dive has changed my perspective on intermittent fasting. It's not just about skipping meals or losing weight. It's about tapping into our body's potential, exploring our mental and spiritual sides, and even considering how we impact the world around us.
It's about finding a way to eat that's in sync with our biology and embracing a more mindful approach to food.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And the best part is, we've only just begun to explore all of this. There's so much more to learn.
It's your deep dive. You get to choose what you want to explore next. What questions are you most curious about?
Oh, so many. I wanted to learn more about the different IF protocols, the specific health conditions it could help with, and how to tailor it for the best results. I'm ready to keep digging. As we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep thinking about something you said earlier, about how IF is more about working with our biology, not against it.
It's really amazing when you think about how IF connects to our evolutionary past. Our bodies are incredibly adaptable. We have these incredible systems for thriving even when food is scarce.
It's almost like we've been programmed to think we need to eat constantly, but our bodies are actually designed for those natural cycles of feast and famine.
And that's what makes IF so fascinating. It's not about deprivation or restriction. It's about giving our bodies a break, a chance to reset and tap into that resilience we've had all along.
I love that. It totally shifts the focus away from feeling limited to feeling empowered.
Exactly. And when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you start to see how IF could have these ripple effects. One of the videos even talked about how it could lead to a more sustainable food system.
Oh, that's right. The idea that being mindful of when we eat could actually have a positive impact on the world is pretty amazing. But let's bring it back to the individual level for a minute. One thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on electrolytes, especially sodium. Why is that so important when we're fasting?
That's a great question. It all comes down to understanding what happens in our bodies during a fast. When we're not eating, our bodies start shedding water weight, and along with that water, we lose essential electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium.
So it's not just about staying hydrated, it's about replenishing those minerals too.
Exactly. Electrolytes play a huge role in keeping our bodies functioning properly. They're involved in everything from muscle function and nerve signals to regulating our heartbeat.
Wow, they really are crucial for everything.
Absolutely. And if we don't make sure we're getting enough electrolytes during a fast, we can end up feeling pretty crummy. Fatigue, headaches, muscle cramps, even more serious issues can pop up.
Okay, that makes it crystal clear why we need to prioritize electrolytes. But what's the best way to do that while fasting? Should we be drinking sports drinks or something?
Not necessarily. Sports drinks are often loaded with sugar, which kind of defeats the purpose of fasting. But the good news is there are tons of other ways to get those electrolytes without breaking your fast.
Okay, tell me more. What are some good options?
Simple things like adding a pinch of sea salt to your water, sipping on some bone broth, or even taking an electrolyte supplement can make a huge difference.
So simple, but so effective. I'm definitely taking note of that.
Hmm.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope listeners will take away from all of this?
That's a good question. If I had to pick just one, it would be this. Listen to your body. Intermittent fasting is a powerful tool, but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Experiment, pay attention to how you feel, and find what truly works best for you.
So it's a journey of self-discovery, guided by our own body's wisdom. I love that.
And as you're on that journey, remember that knowledge is power. You've got a good understanding of the science, the benefits, the potential downsides. Now it's time to use that knowledge to create a fasting experience that fits your needs and goals.
This deep dive has been the perfect launchpad, but the adventure is all mine. I'm excited to see where it goes. Thanks for being such a fantastic guide.
My pleasure. And remember, the world of IF is always changing, with new research and discoveries popping up all the time. So stay curious, keep exploring, and enjoy the ride.
That's exactly what I plan to do. This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what IF is and what it can do. And to everyone listening, I hope this has been as insightful for you as it has been for me. Remember, this is just the beginning. There's a whole world of fasting knowledge out there waiting to be discovered. So keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep listening to your body. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into intermittent fasting.